Let's be honest, Australia, the Liberal Party have done some things that are so evil, it would make even the devil go, what the fuck? You're making my entire ideology a fucking gimmick. I am 90% sure the devil asked his mum to make sure there is no former Liberal MP. I'm pretty sure they checked the bed to make sure Menzies isn't under there. But what takes the cake is their chronic hatred of Medicare. You know what their first stated policy for Medicare was? We promised to tear it apart. First stated policy. They tried to get rid of Medicare for a full-on decade. Then Howard got in, went, you know what? Australian public actually likes Medicare, so we're gonna just pretend that we actually like it now, but just slowly undermine it year after year, as they've done. As much as I blame the entire Liberal Party, let's be honest, most of my blame goes to one man. His name is John Howard. Because Australia, you've got to understand, one of the Liberal Party's major donors is private healthcare. And because exactly after Bob Hawke introduced Medicare, private health insurance fell from 50+% of Australia owning private healthcare to under 30, meaning the entire private health insurance companies across Australia had just lost almost half of their revenue. And because John Howard just saw one of his biggest donors collapse, he did this experimental practice that Liberal Party have never done, give a shit ton of public money to private companies so they can donate to the Liberal Party. But even after that, no one was signing up to it. Even after that massive cash injection, so John Howard went back to the books, he looked at what he could actually do. He then came up with one of the most evil, just most malicious plans I've ever heard of. He just straight up fucking blackmailed people to pay for private health insurance. Because Australia, you gotta remember, when Bob Hawke introduced Medicare, he introduced a 2% levy, but then John Howard came in and said, you know what, that's not enough. I'm gonna add an extra 2% a year, every year after 30, and then he told Australia the only way to get out of that, if you get private health insurance, essentially blackmailing the Australian public to get private health insurance. So people were basically just scouring the net for quite literally the cheapest private health insurance, not actually anything that actually benefits people, just to make sure they get a tax cut. Because of this, 4 in 10 private health insurance plans cover you for less than Medicare does. What this means, you are paying for something that doesn't actually cover you for, let's be honest, anything. Which makes me really laugh at the fact that Scott Morrison had the guts to say,
is we're on your side.
God, I wish Bill Shorten got elected in the 2016 election, because these were his two stated policies, because he looked at what had happened to Medicare and said, you know what, I've got 2 little minor policies that will just negate it a little bit. His first stated policy was give back powers to like fair trade, so like things like this, like the 4 in 10 private health insurance companies cannot just rip off Australia. Because of the Libs, these were private health insurance ads. Here at HealthScope, you've got a kid with a sore tummy, you're sick, don't bother fucking asking us. We don't cover you for shit because you've got almost a 50% chance that we won't do shit. Because here at HealthScope, we don't care about you except your money. Thanks, Liberal Party. You did us a favour, making sure we didn't go bankrupt. I don't know, is that just me, or is that a little bit evil? And pretty much that fake ad pretty much proves why the legislation that Bill Shorten actually wanted to do was necessary. We should have strengthened fair trade, but you know what? It's the Libs, so like they're not going to do it. And then Bill Shorten's other like moderate policy was basically a 2% cap on premiums on private health insurance. Because year on year, premiums had increased between 4 and 5% a year because of the Libs. And also, since Labor left office in 2013, in 2018, premiums have increased by 27%, and what they actually cover you for decreased by 3%, meaning technically there was an increase of 30% on your premiums in fucking 5 years. I think now you can understand why Labor wanted to put that in, because if Labor had been able to put that in back in like 2013, premiums would have only increased 2% a year, meaning by 2018, premiums would have only increased by 10%, while under the Libs, it's nearly 3 times as much. That is a collective 20% jump compared to what Labor was planning on doing. But then when Labor introduced all these policies, the private health insurance companies increased their premiums and decreased what they actually covered you for, basically blackmailing the public to vote Liberal. It is actually scary. The Liberal Party can back up full-on lobby groups just for their interest, using obscene amounts of taxpayer dollars, because the truth is, if say Labor or like Albo just said, you know what, we're not going to pay all this money to like private health insurance, we're going to bring it back into Medicare. Pretty much the second he says that, across all cable TV, across YouTube, all of that stuff, they'll just be barraged with ads saying, hey Australia, I don't know if you've seen this recently, but look at this. Anthony Albanese was over in China. I know Australia was told he was over there to fix up trade between our two nations after 10 years of being fucked over by the Libs, but the truth truth is, he was trading CCP secrets, the communist agenda of taking away your right to pay for shit private services. Just look at it. The Labour Party's flag is red, and so is the Chinese flag. Doesn't that just make you see red? We're not letting handsome boy back in. Well, sorry Australia, I'm sorry to tell you that, but we can't do shit. I guess now it's time to have a look at what the actual New Libs have done now. How have they screwed it over? And it is a lot. Because when Tony Abbott got in, he put Peter Dutton as health minister. I am sorry, health minister? Have you looked at the man? He doesn't look healthy whatsoever. He looks like a potato that got stuck in someone's head. And also Australia, this is what Peter Dutton said when he got in there. This is his actual stated policy. Look at it.
Well, we've said, and we're very clear about this, Medicare is dead.
That is fucked. Peter Dutton kept the Medicare rebate frozen. He increased the levy on that Medicare rebate to make it even harder for the poorest Australians. Peter Dutton was so bad as health minister, even Tony Abbott had to fire him. He sacked him as the Minister for Health. He was also voted the worst health minister by health professionals and also nurses and doctors. Come on, Australia. You know how Malcolm Turnbull was always talking about how Labor was doing that, the Mediscare campaign? It wasn't a scare. They were privatising, they were defunding it, all of that stuff, all throughout the years, but they just did it slowly, so it wasn't easily detected, because if you defund money, that's the same as privatising it. All those things will no longer be paid for on the public service, they'll have to go to the private service. Technically it still exists, but it's sort of a skeleton, because just before the 2016 election, they defunded Medicare by $650 million a year, meaning you now have to pay for things like MRI machines, CAT scans, which is really important in detecting early cancer diagnosis, meaning you now have to pay for that stuff. It's on the private sector. And also another part of the Mediscare, because Liberal Party claimed this was another part because they got ABC fact checked to go, oh no, it's not cutting funding. We just don't increase the funding to an actual decent amount. We don't really calculate to inflation. So it's not decreasing, it's just we're not giving you extra money. Because Bill Shorten made the claim that Liberal Party had cut $80 billion from schools and hospitals, which was true. They just cut in funding. They cut the actual funding increases year on year because the Liberal Party cut $50 billion from hospitals, and then they also cut an additional $30 billion from education Gonski. And then the press just praised Malcolm Turnbull for increasing it by $1.2 billion. $30 billion? $2 billion. If you look in the press's eyes, this is the $30 billion, and this is the $1.2 billion. So much more important. What the fuck? And then after the election, because the Liberal Party made a promise to their big business donors that they'd give them a tax cut, you know how big the tax cut was? $54.5 billion. Do you know how much money they cut from hospitals and Medicare after that? $54 billion. The reason you now have to pay for more things on your Medicare card, they valued more giving a tax break to the richest corporations in this country. Yeah, sure, Australia, both major parties are exactly the same. And these budget cuts mean 20,000 plus doctors and nurses no longer had a job, meaning 107,000 people a year will no longer get actual treatment, meaning 1 million people over the next decade. This is what the Liberals do as soon as they get back in. Their policies are basically just cut. But now we come to the Morrison years. It gets truly evil. During a global pandemic, he was able to get some of those evil policies got through work choices, a policy not even John Howard was able to pass. But even in the midst of a global pandemic where he's botching the Pfizer rollout, he was still somehow able to just destroy an institution even more. He made the Medicare rebate even worse. He decreased it even more. He cut subsidies in medication like ADHD medication, heart medication, all of that stuff. You know how it used to be paying $6? Because of Morrison, you're now paying for things like $80 plus. And now it comes to the time after every documentary of really horrendous industries, just them massacring a bunch of animals, the nature and the environment and just climate change. There's all this thing about there is hope, and there is. Labor's now increased bulk billing, largest amount since Bob Hawke introduced it. Sure, there's a lot to still do, but Medicare is on the tenterhooks. It basically depends on which government you vote in the next election. Dutton, worst health minister ever, I wonder what he'll do. Or Albo, from a party who created it. Sure, it's not going to be perfect from the get-go. It's got a lot of work to actually fix it. You've had nearly 30 years of just neglect, attack on Medicare. It's not going to be quick.